On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, I talk with best-selling author Mike Michalowicz about how to find a niche, ride the wave, and surge. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and I am really excited to have a repeat guest, Mr. Mike Michalowicz. Mike is the author of several books. I've read every single one of them, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, The Pumpkin Plan, and one of my truly favorite best books that I recommend to everybody, Profit First. And he's got an upcoming book, Surge. So, Mike, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh my God, it's such a joy to be back. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, we've got this new book and that's coming out soon, I think. And I love that we get to be on the cutting edge of something new. I'm excited about that. So I want to ask you a little bit about it. What's the concept about the new book?
Yeah, so the concept, ironically, it's just that. It's about being on the cutting edge.
Okay.
So I got a question from a reader that kind of blew me back for a little bit, and I decided to start researching out, prepare a thesis, and investigating it. And so I had a fan that was very kind and said, I enjoy your books, but there's one piece I want to know. How do I put myself in the right place at the right time? So you mentioned like Profit First and these other books I've written. I believe them emphatically, but I also know if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, that no matter how well structured you are, no matter how much marketing effort you put in, it ain't going to happen. Like if I decide today I'm going to go into the typewriting business, good luck in going big in that market. So this question kind of caught me off guard, and I started to research it, and I was wondering if there was a magic bullet, meaning if I could just time the stock market by a few seconds, I could be a billionaire. So I started investigating this, and obviously there is no magic bullet, but there is a way to so much improve the odds. And where I found it, interestingly, I always like to do analogies. I was sitting on the beach, relatively close to where I live here in New Jersey, one day, years ago, and watching surfers. And I noticed that the best surfers had kind of a certain process they were following. Started interviewing surfers, learned about it, did many case studies, interviewed a lot of businesses that also timed the market, just like surfers were timing the waves, and found that there was a pattern. I then subsequently tried it in my own business. I believe in not just writing and studying. I believe in actually applying to myself to see what works and doesn't. Started working in my own business, improved the system, and then finally wrote the book Surge about the process.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, you kind of mentioned it just now in your answer. You're like, there's not a magic bullet, but what's the process? How do you kind of time it? How do you make sure that you're at the right place at the right time?
Right. So you can up the odds, and it's about seeing what's called imminent trends. An imminent trend is different than a trend. A trend is forecasting, seeing what potentially could happen. And in many cases, like forecasting the weather. Most of the time, the weatherman actually gets it wrong. Your better bet is to go against what they say. Well, an imminent wave is a wave in the marketplace that is already upon us, and it's statistically proven. There's enough momentum that now if we get in front of it, we can carry it. And so that's what we need to do. Surge is actually a 5-step process. It's an acronym. Not only what happens is a surge, but it's also an acronym. S stands for separate, U stands for unify, R stands for rally, G stands for gather, and E stands for expand. And these are the steps you follow. The most important, if you get nothing right in this process, the most important is the separate phase. It's finding that niche. It's something I explored in the Pumpkin Plan extensively, but outlined very strategically now in Surge. And the idea is this. Kirby, I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, hey, Mike, what's the next big trend? And my answer is, well, where are you looking? And they say, what do you mean? Like, is it the autonomous car? I said, no. Those are huge market movements. We have to pick a very specific category. There's literally a trend happening right now in bookkeepers. That's the one I'm actually invested in studying. Yarn manufacturers, quilters, the watermark, in all these different categories, there's a trend. So the key to finding the next wave is first to pick the spot you're going to surf at. What's that very narrow niche? Then start investigating and see what the imminent wave is. That will up your odds by picking a category first.
So you mentioned that the surge is sort of an acronym. So what are the 5 stages?
Yeah. So I'll go through them really quickly. So
Yeah.
S stands for separate. It's what we just investigated. It's finding a niche. I'll tell you what the best way to find a niche is. If you have existing customers, and a lot of us do, usually in a very general market, that is, by the way, an indicator you won't grow because you have to, when you serve a general market, you have to be a generalist. You have to be kind of good at a few things, but you never can be masterful at one thing. So first, pick a niche. But the second thing is, if you look at your existing customer base and there's certain customers you like doing work with, usually they are a shortcut to learning about a niche. So look for already established great customers, but secondly, where you're also curious about that market. So listen, you may have a customer that is a quilt manufacturer, but you give two hoots about quilting. For you to become masterful at providing your services to the quilting industry and really steeping yourself in the knowledge about quilting ain't going to happen. But if you have another client that makes, maybe they do make electric car batteries, and you're really into electric cars and electric motors, maybe there's a better opportunity there. So that's the separate phase. Once you identify it, look for what's called the unifier. The unifier is a movement of demand based upon usually a common problem. What's the challenge people are facing? As I wrote Surge, one thing that was interesting, I interviewed Brian Smith. He is the founder of UGG Boot. And when I was talking with him, I said, how did you find your market? And he said, well, they revealed themselves. I was watching surfers, actually, who he sold the UGG boot to originally. I was watching surfers in the late 70s. That's when he started his business. And I found something interesting, a unifying problem. In 1979, neoprene started making significant advances. Up to that point, surfers typically surfed in the surfing months when the weather was warmer. But now with neoprene suits and the advancements, they were much more mobile and flexible. Now surfers could surf year-round in the freezing Pacific during the winter. Now what's fascinating is they could surf year-round, but when they came in off the beach, onto the beach, their feet were freezing. They were barefoot still. Their feet were freezing, and they were wrapping in blankets, trying to stick them next to fires, do anything to warm them up. And he said, oh my gosh, this has invoked a new problem. If I can find the solution, the UGG boot, ways to have warm feet in the cold winter weather, he has an opportunity. So what's the unifying problem, and what can you provide right in front of that problem to solve it? R stands for Rally Cry. Rally Cry kind of ties back into a corporate mission. You got to solve people's problems, but you have to have a greater purpose too. Why? Because the early adopters, the people that have the courage to buy your service or your product, the early adopters will get lambasted for doing it. The first guy walking down, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Spies Like Us, where those guys, Dan Aykroyd and stuff, had these. That was the first surfer. Could you imagine a surfer in the 70s walking down the beach with these UGG boots that looked like these crazy things? An Ewok or something? People would make fun of them.
Yeah.
And the question is, does the early adopters have the fortitude to stick with brand loyalty? Because they are the ones that have to convert and convince others. Well, how you do it is you have to give them a rally cry, something that's greater than the service or product itself. What the rally cry for UGG was year-round surfing. He says, man, with these boots, you can year-round surf. For me, I sell to bookkeepers. My rally cry is we eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. Yeah, I have a solution for bookkeepers that helps them, but the mission we're on together is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And it empowers them when an early adopter comes on and does profit first, professionals in the organization. Right. When people come on to me and they get attacked by others, they say, listen, the market doesn't do this. Who is this guy? They now have a greater purpose that will see them through that challenging phase. It's called the rally. Two more stages. G stands for gather. When surfers are up on the wave, they don't just sit there. As you know, they start moving and going around. They start looking for what's called the pocket. It's the core essence of the energy of the wave. In the marketplace, there's this core group. It is those early adopters and the people that are now rallying around them. But their needs aren't typically addressed by your first implementation. The first UGG boot was not a perfect fit. He had to raise the size of the boots up our calves, so that when you walk down the beach, the sand couldn't kick in. So the first development was too low. He raised them up. It was a better solution. When we're in the market, get rapport with those early adopters. Start catering to them. Tweak and adjust to get to the pocket of the wave, the real core solution. Inevitably, our first shot at it is usually a wrong shot, but we are up in the wave, we have to shift over. And then the final phase is called expansion. And I'm sometimes hesitant about talking about this because many businesses that I've been working with now want to jump to expansion and forget the first four stages. Yeah. They say, I'm like, that's great stuff, but tell me, how do I get bigger? You got to do the first four stages. You have to. Here's the fifth and final stage. Only once you've mastered the first four, it's replicating what's working into different markets. UGG was after surfers. UGG got to about $10 million in revenue first before he looked for other cold feet. And Brian Smith said, oh, wow, look at the opportunity in the hockey market. Athletes, they come in off the ice, cold feet, hunters in the winter, skiers. And then ultimately he went for the most competitive, aggressive, cutthroat market of all time, teenage girls, right? Teenage girls. He moved over to that. So the lesson is this. Maybe the number's 10 million, maybe it's 50 million. You have to achieve certain size and predictable profitability before you can jump to another market. The one risk I want to tell you about expansion is you will be called a sellout by the original group. Surfers don't wear UGG anymore because it ain't cool. Why? Because UGG abandoned them. My favorite rock band in the 80s was Def Leppard. I thought they were the coolest band. They came out with this album called High and Dry. I thought it was badass. They came out with Pyromania. Like, these guys are amazing. And then they sold out with this album, I can't remember now, Adrenalize or whatever. Yeah, Hysteria. What they did is they made a fundamental shift. They said, that kind of glam metal could actually play into top 40 music. We have an opportunity to expand. From Def Leppard's vantage point, smartest move ever. They expand to the mass market. That made those guys the richest guys of all time in rock band history. Well, one of them. But for the early adopters who love the early albums, Def Leppard is the enemy now. But that's the natural thing. If you want to go into expansion phase, you must master the first four steps and then have a real gut check. Are you interested in possibly expanding and being a sellout simultaneously? I've never seen a company expand out and not be a sellout. We loved Apple when Apple was beating up on Microsoft. But look at Apple now. They're a juggernaut. They expanded. The early adopters hate Apple.
Yeah.
And it's happened over and over and over again. So just be forewarned about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what I think is interesting about the concept here, Mike, is it's like taking Pumpkin Plan kind of to the next level, at least from the outside looking in.
That's exactly right. So the Pumpkin Plan was basically the S phase, the separate phase, and started playing that niche. These questions started coming in. It's like, how do I go further? How do I do it? By timing. And this is the process. It is a lot of timing. The interesting thing about surfing is you exert your energy in the beginning, you're paddling to catch the wave, to synchronize with it. That's what the Pumpkin Plan was about, that separate phase and unify. The majority of the surge is actually the market carrying you. Because if you are preemptive, you're moving with the early adopters. As the market gets momentum, you're the first there. The market carries you. There's very little effort required, which is also ironic because you don't have to market that well. You don't have to actually have a perfect product. You're the first person there, so the market carries you. And over time, you have to get better and be ready, but you will feel the market pushing you. That's when you're sitting there saying, gosh, everyone keeps calling me. Everyone wants my stuff. I don't even have to market it anymore. That's the wave starting to carry you.
That's fantastic. I'm excited about the new book. You've answered my 3 questions. I always give everybody a chance to ask me one question. Do you have one for me?
I do. And I was actually looking forward to this because you're the master of marketing. The question I have for you is when it comes to marketing on the cheap. Here's the challenge I'll set up. Many people have approached me saying, Mike, I want to get my business going, but I got 0 in revenue, I got 0 clients, and I need to get the word out. And everyone's saying, run $1,000 on Google, run pay-per-click ads, do stuff on Facebook. I can't even afford that. Do you have some tips you share with me on how to market when you don't have money?
Boy, that's a great question, and one that, as you might expect, I get a lot. I think you and I are pretty like-minded, Mike. I think that so many people are looking for the magic bullet on the marketing side too. And really, the number one thing to do is to work harder than everybody else, right?
Yes.
Be willing to do the things that don't cost money that most people aren't willing to do. Be willing to go out and knock on doors. Be willing to go demo your product. Or your service or whatever. But beyond that, I think let's put it this way, I am getting ready to start a new business myself, and I'm looking at social and I'm looking at content creation within that niche that you're trying to get. So to kind of piggyback on what you've said is I want to look at the S, right? And I want to find that relevant niche, and I want to create awesome content that answers questions that they have and concerns and problems that they have, elevate myself to an expert in that area, and then they come to me. That takes time, it takes hustle, it takes patience, but by doing that, I think if you're looking for on the cheap, that's where I would start.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Thank you.
Cool, man. Well, hey, real quickly, where can we find the book? I'm excited to check it out myself.
So Surge is on Amazon right now as we speak in the Kindle version and the audio version. I'm actually trying a new thing. Through my analysis, it looks like most books historically are introduced by the print version coming out first and then the electronic. I think actually the new surge, if you will, in the future books is electronic first. Okay. So I'm trying that out. So as of this morning, as we're doing this recording, you can get it on Amazon in either the Audible version or the Kindle version. And then June 20th is when it'll be also available in the print version. And of course, if you go to MikeMichalowicz.com, that's my website. I'll give you a shortcut to get there. Go to Mick in Google. Just type in Mike and then Mick, the longest, most Polish name on the planet. That's me. If you click on it, I got free chapters, tons of stuff. I think you'll find it to be a really unique and different website. And also there'll be links to get Surge particularly fast to your house or office or wherever you want to get your copy.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for doing this today. And again, thanks for all the books you've written so far. I've gotten a lot out of them. And yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime, okay?
That'd be awesome. Thanks, Kirby.
All right. Well, that wraps up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!